2022. The course is motion capture. I'm Luke, and I'm gonna take you through the motion capture module at Bruford. For the whole first week, we started with working with some Trateau, which is Lecoq derived, I believe, and was essentially Will telling us that we couldn't leave a square for a whole week. Trateau was very useful. We ended up doing a film with 7 people in that square and not leaving that square, and we did Charlie in the Chocolate Factory.
I just love your chocolate.
It's all about seeing the space, seeing the big space in the small space, you know, seeing the outer world, the other world, and you can tell a massive story just in this small square. And you can already see how it relates to mocap. In the world of mocap, you have your little section of the world, but there is the whole bigger world out there that you need to know, you need to see as your character. I mean, it helped to solve problems down the line already before we even had the problems, such as there was an exercise we did in Trateau where there was 2 people lost in a jungle. First they had to, you know, see the jungle, be in the jungle. They had to lose each other in the jungle and then find each other again. Now, the secret was, it was all about wholly working together as a pair to not see each other. We worked together to be in the same world, 100%, and then the audience were buying it, and then you had to lose each other. This guy falls down a hole, and he's going, help, help. Because they're in 2 different worlds in the same square, the opportunity opens up for them to go on 2 separate paths that kind of intertwine with each other from the audience's perspective, but from their 2 perspectives, they're just still going on their own journey. So this guy that's fallen down the hole can crouch down and try and go through a tunnel, and it turns out to be the tunnel's this person's legs, so they go through the legs and they work together. And for the audience go, oh my god. And you would do that by balancing the space. A trick we used a lot in mocap when it came to filming was all about balancing the space, more for aesthetics and how it would look on screen, so you didn't kind of, you know, block each other or go through each other. And that working together was absolutely essential when it came to motion capture. Say if you were a dragon and a dwarf, the dragon's massive wing hits the dwarf's tiny head. You both need to work together to see that wing coming in, and then both have the effect of hitting the dwarf and the dwarf being hit. And kind of that spatial relationship as well. Trateau worked a lot with perspective, switching the frames from like a really far out frame to a really close up frame. Getting to know what your relationship is with the rest of the space is very useful if you're a tiny dwarf and a big dragon and you need to be a lot smaller or you need to be a lot bigger than you usually are. Or even if you're just talking to each other and where you look to get each other's eyes. For the dwarf you might have to look at the ceiling, and the dragon might have to look at the dwarf's very toes. And the first day of mocap we were very it was very exciting. We went through the characters and there were so many creatures to choose from. You could choose whatever you wanted. All of them brought different qualities that were very hard to choose from. Do I want to spend the next 2 weeks trying to get the physicality of a giant ogre with a big club in its hand, or just a tiny little dwarf? And for me, I kind of just went off what will I enjoy the most. All of them are going to be challenging, so what challenge am I going to enjoy the most? This led me to the vampire. I mean, as soon as I saw the vampire, I was like, yeah, that's my one. I thought it'd be very physically demanding, and I was very up for that. With the ogres and the cyclopses were so big, and the other challenge is then to be more slow and heavy, and with the vampire it's almost the other way, because you're so skinny and flexible and slimy. It's almost like you can overmove, but specifically, obviously, and finding those specifics was something I was excited to do, to naturally, you know, grow them. It began straight away the next day with some Laban work. We start by finding kind of our own use of weight and space. We focused on all the different effort qualities, and even going beyond the physical, taking it into feeling, kind of your internal drives and centers. And like the brain was the intuitive and the heart was kind of feeling. I started to think, where does my vampire base its life around? What one of these kind of senses does it base its life around? And I got very stomach of the sensing area, a bit like primal. That's very true for the vampire. There was a couple other vampires in the space as well, and it was very interesting because I fucking hated them. And I started to get more an emotional connection to the vampire. Just hating people. My vampire was constantly in that state. And then the movement kind of can then come from that. Yeah, we kind of shelved the movement for a second, and Alice came in and looked at the voice. Both the movement and voice takes time to grow with the right ingredients. It's like a plant. The start of voice introduced us to where does your resonance come from, because if you don't find where your resonance comes from, then you're just going to take it all from here, and you're going to have no voice. Especially if you're doing all sorts of exotic things with it that would be demanded of weird creatures. Again, we always kind of start with ourselves, because if you start with yourself, you're starting on the body you know the most, which is yourself. Once you know how to do it and how to apply it, you can then do the same thing and change one thing about it, and then you realise, you're taking on another being. We did some exercises drawing resonance from the belly, and just channeling it out as one straight column, and then bring that forward, and you could still feel the resonance still bubbling in your stomach. There's also resonance that you could get from up here. That was a lot higher, a lot more nasally, and a lot higher. And we were taken through the resonance scale, Zuwo, Shaw, Ma, Goth. What that did is kind of give us an area for where each resonance is placed. All of this helped me find the first kind of step to the voice of the vampire. Where does the voice come from? And originally I thought, it was stomach, because a lot of the things were to do with the stomach. As it went on, it got higher and higher. We did an exercise where we placed mouths at different parts of our body and breathed from these different parts, and then hummed out for it and felt resonance from that place. We walked around the space, found where our creature would breathe from. The vampire breathes from this part of the top of the throat. As soon as I was breathing from there, I felt disgusting and slimy and horrible and clicky, and I wanted to be able to talk on in-breath and out-breath. I feel like the vampire doesn't waste any breath, so even talks on his in-breath as well, creating a kind of... Then I took that into my voice, and with the resonance scale you can play with where you put different things. So you can go up here and then come down there. To get that range translates so much better on a mocap screen. Playing these outlandish characters, they've got to have outlandish voices, and it really helped with the physicality as well. Voice and physicality really lean into each other. Once you've got them really working together, I think you've got a really solid character. And it all comes from the breath. My partner was Alfie. We decided to do a werewolf and vampire fight. We sat down and we go, why? It's the first thing as actors that we want to know. Why are we fighting? Let's give this an intention, let's give this a reason, let's give this a story. It's all well and good just throwing punches at each other, but if you don't know why you're doing it, you're not going to feel some good inner life, which is what everyone's searching for. I wanted to start a lot more rational and calm and having more humanity in me, but there is a moment of shift when I draw blood from him. I go into a bit of a blood craze where I can then bring out a lot more primal and animalistic, desperate qualities. I'm excited for the blood, and I can bring that out in my voice and in my movement. It gave my vampire a massive range. It was all set to go. But the first, biggest problem that we faced, COVID-19. My partner, Alfie, got COVID. Everything got thrown into a tiz. I then partnered up with Becca and Izzy. That was our next task, to choreograph this new fight. We had a lot more to think about. Me and Becca were vampires and Izzy was a werewolf. We wanted to include the fact that the vampires aren't really friends, and the vampires themselves probably would fight over food, every man for himself type thing. This was helped actually by our Alexander technique and anatomy lessons with Dory. We focused a lot on the stomach, and they gave us a lot of intention and a lot of drive for hunger. It's in it for the food. The belly was caved out. So the vampire is always hungry. And also posture, and how we're not bent over from the shoulders. We are forced back by our stomachs pulling in, and that kind of hunches us over naturally. Which for me anyway made my posture a lot easier and a lot more fluid. It helped my breath go a bit more undead-like. And it made me realise as well, the movements of my vampire never moved unless there was food, and he knew that there was food there. Why would he? because he was just going to waste energy. So he would just stay still. Also a factor is that we had massive ears and tiny eyes like bats. And so every movement was derived from hearing. You can't physically see the thing you're fighting, but you can hear their every move. Those two senses as well were the two main things I could now take in and focus on. It really helped me with the voice. The voice came a bit more kind of desperate. I'm gonna talk really like quickly and articulate everything so you can understand, because if I have to repeat myself then that's less time eating. We then had another lesson with Dory where she talked a lot about push and pull. When two people in any sort of engagement, there's always a push and a pull, especially in this sort of fight scenario. If this monster's gonna push, this monster's gonna pull back and defend its most sensitive part. So it got me thinking, where is the vampire's most sensitive part? If the werewolf were to come at me, where would it attack and where would I need to defend? You also have to think about where your werewolf's most sensitive part is as well, because that's probably what you want to attack. Everything started to revolve around the stomach, really. So mine was just to protect my precious stomach, my holy place. If one little bit of food dropped out of me, I would starve to death. And whenever I would need to defend, my big claws would straight defend my stomach. When we were in the scene and fighting, it didn't give us kind of like meaningless sways. It gave us kind of intentions, and like I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna push now because I can see a weakness in the wolf. It really helped us to be affected by each other's presence. It came to pass, Becca, my vampire partner, had fallen to COVID as well. It was just me and Izzy left, and we choreographed a new routine. Here's some clips. What we then were playing with was, where is the audience? Where is the front? We went with this one that we preferred with as the front because I think you got a lot more juice, but we wouldn't know where the kind of front was until we got into the studio. A lot of the marking and technicalities were all resting on the 2 hours that we've got in the studio. And by God, was it fun. Me and Izzy got in the studio the next day, got suited and booted up. What was immediately hard was the size difference between the werewolf and the vampires. To catch her arms, I'd have to catch it very high up, and she would have to like put them like very far away from me. So you had to kind of time your arms perfectly to kind of look like they're hitting my arms, but they're just hitting thin air. That all goes back to Will's Tratto work about working together. Once we got the technicalities down, it was really just about hitting the marks that we've put on the floor so that it would just create a nice visual piece to look at on the screen. I found pairing my physicality with this specific fight choreography very challenging. And the more time we spent practicing the choreography, the more I was able to apply my physicality. So I would ask COVID to politely hold off for a minute next time, so I would have more time with my partner to naturally apply our physicality and potentially expand the choreography to something a bit more complicated. And a big main takeaway for me was you have to see the world. We were in a castle. I had to see the castle walls, and I had to see that the entrance was there, and I had to have my eye on it so that I could maybe escape there. It's just so I'm fully in it. If any part of you is doubting that, it's gonna relate in your physicality in some way, and it's gonna be not believable. You gotta know your intentions, you gotta know why you're fighting. Then the physicality comes to you. It's wholly about teamwork, because yes, you have to be in it, but your partner's got to be right there with you. And one of the big notes actually I got when fighting, take time to react to where you've been hit. It's like the stick exercise in 20 movement. You use it, and then you see another one, move towards it, embrace it. You got to look back at the stick that you've just had before you let it go. Just like when you've got a wound, you got to look back at it. You got to draw attention to it, almost like, yes, I've been hit here. So the camera knows, obviously you've been hit there. You as a character can be like, shit, I've been hit, and then reassess and be like, right now, how do I fight this monster with my new injury that I have? And that just brings a whole nother level of detail. And it all comes really with slowing it down. Don't attack it and don't force it. You've got to release everything and breathe and slow the fight down, and then you realise more details you can add in. Something Marcello was saying quite a lot. Got to be these moments of like tension or release. What would look good on the motion capture camera, where you would just kind of swipe a moment of like tension where you've got them, and then you release them. It just emphasises the swipe that you've done and the injury that you've caused. And yes, you've got all these marks to hit and all these things to do. You can find your freedom in it. You can find why you want to move to that mark. Mocap experience 2022, had a blast, had a ball, would definitely do it again, minus the COVID. I just can't wait to work at more mocap in the future. It's like acting on steroids. But thank you very much for this experience.